And thank you for joining us on the social media live event, where we will discuss some of the inspiring mental health projects and club activities underway across the Rotary world. As you've heard by now, I've placed a special emphasis this year on mental health projects and club activities, and I've called on all Rotary members to work towards lowering the stigma associated with mental health worldwide, to raise awareness about the prevalence of this growing global health challenge, and to take action to expand access to mental health and wellness care. I'm delighted that Rotary members everywhere have taken up this call, and I extend a warm welcome to everyone joining today's conversation. Please share in the chat your thoughts about this programme and email mindhealth@rotary.org to share about your mental health efforts. Over to you, Lauren, to lead us through today's conversation.
Thank you, President Gordon, both for the warm introduction and for your courageous leadership on this issue. I'm Lauren Fields, the Program Specialist for Programs for Young Leaders at Rotary, and I will be serving as your moderator and host for today's program. I'm delighted to be joined by 3 Rotary members doing incredible work to create hope for Rotary members and the people joining us in our efforts to prioritize mental health. A quick note to our viewers watching live on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. This is a live event, and we encourage you to ask questions. We'll do our best to get to them, but if we don't, we'll answer them afterwards. And if you would prefer to ask a meeting participant or President Gordon another mental health-related question, feel free to do so at mindhealth@rotary.org. Joining me today is Glenda Dela Cruz, a medical professional from Canada who now lives in the Philippines. Glenda is a proud Rotarian and an active member of the Rotary Club of Tiaong-Hiyas. Glenda was her club's president in 2022-2023. She was key in organizing a Rotary Community Corps, which focuses on supporting and empowering marginalized mothers, which has now evolved into the creation of a holistic wellness center that prioritizes mental health. We are also joined by Dr. Athena Trentin, the Executive Director of the National Alliance on Mental Illness, or NAMI, North Texas in the United States. Athena's work focuses on education, advocacy, and building a community of support for individuals and families affected by mental health challenges, with a personal emphasis on the mental health and well-being of Native American communities. She is also a former Rotary Youth Exchange participant and a current member of the Rotary E-Club of Suicide Prevention and Brain Health. Finally, we have Philip Flindt, Rotary's first Rotaractor to serve as a public image coordinator from Denmark. Philip has been part of several Rotaract efforts to support the mental health of their members, and he spoke eloquently about his own mental health journey at the 2023 Rotary International Assembly in Orlando. Welcome, everyone. I want to start things off with Glenda because her project is already garnering attention in the Rotary world. President Gordon, in fact, mentioned your maternal mental health project in a Rotary magazine column last October. So Glenda, tell us about how your club worked with a Rotary Community Corps to develop a project prioritizing the well-being of mothers and how it evolved to include mental health services.
Yeah, I would love to share that. So I guess to answer that question, I'm gonna have to start with really how the Rotary Community Corps Ilaw ng Tahanan came to be. So the work with them started back in 2022, 2023, where it really began with a disease prevention service project. And it was a 12-week health challenge with this group of mothers, and we started with pre-challenge we started with laboratory testing for some basic blood work, pre-challenge and post-challenge, and then during the 12 weeks there was coaching and mentoring. And so during the 12 weeks, the relationship amongst the mothers kind of developed and friendships came to be. And towards the end of it, they were actually the ones who wanted to continue on being together, spending time together. And so they had asked me, it would be such a shame to stop the camaraderie, the relationship that they have built. And at that time, I came across the Rotary Community Corps. It was presented at one of our district's event, and so I presented that to them, and they were actually the ones who wanted to form the Rotary Community Corps, and so they ended up being Ilaw ng Tahanan. And so the support that the club has provided, has given the RCC Ilaw ng Tahanan is really in so many different levels, from funding some of their projects, but also just trusting that the work that's being done is something worthwhile, because it was something new. The work that they were doing, the work that we were doing, is something new in the community, probably something new in the region. And so nobody really knew what was happening, but they just saw that it was working with these mothers that were continuing to meet together, working on themselves, improving themselves, and showing up and saying that this group, that this work that they're doing together is helping them be better mothers, right? So so the ongoing support from the beginning till now has been from funding projects, from mentoring and coaching, and then to this point, I guess I'm going to share where they're at now. This is like almost 2 years later, where we actually have a physical space where it's going to be a holistic wellness center for the mothers to come to get peer support. The mothers are going to be trained as peer support workers, so really providing mental and emotional support for one another. And this wellness space is also going to provide a variety of things, because we know that mental health, the different factors that affect mental health some of them are, financial reasons, or sometimes it's just really personal skills that they need to develop, or just communication and all that stuff. So this holistic wellness place will have livelihood programs, personal development, skills training. And I guess to just kind of sum it all up, another support, not just at the club level, that I want to share is at the district level. The district governor that we had 2022-2023, Governor Gina C., she had applied for a global grant, and I just heard today that this is going to push through. So the vision of having a space for the mothers to come to a space where they're going to be supported mentally and emotionally, the vision of having a computer center, a physical activity center, salon and spa for their livelihood, it's all gonna unfold, right? So so the support has been so much from the club members and also from the district, and the mothers are really quite excited because they feel that that they are supported in all kinds of ways, and we continue to meet, and really just working on those, I guess, personal skills, improving themselves, right? And we're partnering with other organizations here in the Philippines. We're creating a peace hub with a local meditation center. So lots of support that's happening, and it's all for to push forward this mental health support for the RCC Ilaw ng Tahanan, and all the other things that they're doing. So in a nutshell, that's how they're being supported. So thank you, Lauren.
Thank you, Glenda. This project is a great example of a Rotary Club building a strong relationship with community members, which helped them better understand the community's priorities. Together, you designed a project based on evolving needs. It's such a great example of a long-term relationship that was formed to address one need and then evolved and grew based on continued feedback and leadership from within the community. It's also a great example of what clubs can do to advance access to mental health care. So, Glenda, I'm curious, what inspires you to do this work?
Yeah. What inspires me to do this work? There's so many things so many things that inspires me to do this kind of work. But I guess I'm just going to share two things. One is that back in 2014, I witnessed my son develop a psychotic episode, acute psychotic episode into 2014. And um, it was really difficult. And so, 2014 to now, such a big difference for me. But at that time, I was really, I was lost. I was thrown into, my world was kind of flipped upside down. So um, I guess I don't want from that experience, if I could do something to alleviate another mother from having to go through what I went through, um, I would. So that's one of the inspiration that I do this work, because I know that if there is support, the outcome for any sort of health challenge is better. And yeah, so that experience alone, I wouldn't want any other mother to go through that. And so that really pushes me to keep going and work with these mothers, and work with anyone to help them understand mental health better, and also to be better supporters. Another thing that probably I would say at the top of the list that inspires me is the stories that I hear from the mothers, the ones who have joined the RCC, and they share the same thing that I share. I shared about myself, is that when they do this work that we do, they have said that they have become better person, better mothers, better wives. They're able to go out there, have more confidence, take opportunities, engage in different kind of activities that they haven't really participated in before. So it's so inspiring to hear those stories of triumphs from these mothers, and so I'm just really inspired to just keep going, and one mother at a time, bring them into the Rotary Community Corps, and yeah, just keep doing the work.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Glenda, and for sharing your personal story and for your commitment to this cause. This leads me to Dr. Trentin, because while your background is in education, you've worked extensively on the issue of mental health access. So, Athena, tell us about the work you're doing with NAMI in Texas with Indigenous populations, and the potential for Rotary clubs to form collaborations with similar organizations worldwide.
First and foremost, thank you very much for inviting me to join you today. NAMI, if anyone out there is not familiar with the organization, is the National Alliance on Mental Illness, and we are the local affiliate that serves part of North Texas. And our goal is to build a supportive, non-judgmental community for people affected by mental health issues. And this not only includes peers, who are the people who have the mental health challenges, but NAMI is also has one of the most robust sets of resources for family members. And we work to normalize the mental health conversation, reduce stigma through advocacy at the local, state, national levels, education to the community, as well as building that community of support. And so as you build a community of support, you have to take into account who is in that community. And my affinity with the Indigenous population is growing up in that environment and having my own experiences with mental illness, even though while growing up, it was not recognized. So it wasn't until I started with NAMI that I overcame the fear of being weak and the stigma, and learned that through NAMI, you can actually empower yourself with your story. And so my focus on Native American populations not only stems from my background growing up in that culture, but also from working in student affairs for over 25 years with international and multicultural students. I worked with a lot of first-generation American students, of underrepresented communities, and I worked with a lot of international students, helping them adjust to the U.S. culture, the U.S. education system. And there's a very strong overlap with mental health issues, be it situational, going through a significant change, to triggering events that cause a crisis. The majority of crises happen at that college age. So we saw a significant number of times when we did have to refer people to mental health services. And so with NAMI, I'm able to take that passion to not only represent the indigenous culture, but also look at the organization, look at the community we serve, and recognize the importance of gaining trust within those communities so that we're not just going in and saying, hey, we've got resources for you, we can make things happen, because that has often caused trauma to these communities. And I can tell you from firsthand experience, it has in the indigenous community. The forced assimilation and different acculturation efforts within the indigenous community have caused identity issues, issues with trusting the federal government, trusting the community outside their own. And the other piece of it is when you see statistics on the larger groups in the United States, the larger underrepresented groups, the Black and the African American community, the Hispanic community, oftentimes the Native American community, and I'm speaking only in mathematical terms, they are statistically insignificant. We are less than 1% of the U.S. population. So our community is very often left out of the statistics that you see in articles, in the media. And so it's really, really hard to educate outside of the indigenous community that, this community needs resources as well, and taking special efforts to make sure they are included. Because if you did include their statistics in these reports, they would be number one at the top of every list you would not want to be on. Teenage pregnancies, mental health issues, substance abuse, drug and alcohol abuse, diabetes, health issues, life expectancy, you name it. And all of that, plus the generational trauma, plus the distrust in outside communities that have built over the years, all contributes to how they approach their lives, their mental health. So I take not only my approach to the indigenous community, but also other underrepresented communities, because there are similar attitudes. Everybody, the trust builds within a certain area of that community. Within the Native American community, it's often with their community organization. Here in Dallas, we have Texas Native Health, which is an urban Indian health services clinic. So that's where they trust to get their health care. So gaining that trust is partnering with organizations like that. They also have a very strong Methodist church here in Dallas. So working with those organizations and going through those organizations instead of going into the community and just offering the services or imposing the services is very important. And then with any underrepresented group, it's really important to take into account their belief systems. The indigenous community, whether it's medical, mental health, or social services, it's very, very important to maintain the traditions and incorporate our traditions into our care. Our belief system, originally, there really wasn't a stigma before the United States, North America was settled. Somebody with a mental health issue, it existed. There wasn't a name for it, and it's the same thing with people who identified with the LGBTQ plus community. They were seen as gifts from the Creator with special powers. But due to the forced assimilation and acculturation, the stigma within the Western European community infiltrated as they were either required or willingly took on some of the traditions of the dominant community here. And so now the stigma has been raised. So how do we get through that? And incorporating traditional approaches and making sure you have trust within that community is really important. And in relation to Rotary clubs, there are so many opportunities for partnerships with different community organizations, and Rotary clubs are already doing that. A lot of times we get speaker requests, but it's like a one-off speaker request, but not developing a long-lasting relationship. Ways to work with your local NAMI. There are over 600 NAMI affiliates all across the country, and there are also similar organizations in other countries that you could seek out and develop a partnership. With the NAMI structure, we focus a lot on lived experience. No program that we offer is led by somebody other than someone with lived experience. So any of our family programs, you have a family member who has a loved one with a mental health issue, so that you can relate to them and they can relate to you, and they may be further along in the process and may be able to help guide you through, mentor you, or just say, you know what, you're not alone. Families are affected just as much. 1 in 5 people have a mental illness. During and just after COVID, it's not official, but it was estimated 1 in 4 because of the isolation, the uncertainty, the social unrest, everything that was happening in the world. But if you ask a crowd, of 100 people, how many people are affected by mental illness, you would see 100% of the people raising their hand. You either know somebody, you have a loved one, you've tried to get them care when they refused it. And so we recognize at NAMI that everybody is affected. And so Rotary clubs, by partnering with your local NAMI affiliate, you could raise that bar and raise that level of education, help normalize the conversation by saying, hey, we could host a support group. Why don't we, host an educational event and open it up to all of our members or even the general public within our service area? Although NAMI is not international, I encourage anyone who's not in the United States to seek out a similar organization. What you would look for is a community organization, not necessarily clinical, but some clinical facilities do have similar support services, but seek out an organization that is really working hard to normalize the conversation, reduce stigma, and connect people with services.
Thank you so much, Athena. And I especially appreciate your perspective of how Rotary and Rotaract clubs can expand their engagement on mental health projects like yours. How have your personal experiences growing up Indigenous shaped your perspectives and energized you to serve mental health needs?
I think I alluded a little bit before to just gaining that unique perspective of growing up as part of an underrepresented community. I grew up in a very rural area in northern Michigan, predominantly white. And as you can see, it's not obvious I'm American Indian. My skin is a little bit lighter, and sometimes people don't recognize it by just looking at me. So, not making assumptions about people and their background is really important, because when you grow up and you don't fit the stereotypical image of what they think it should be, what people think it should be, it really causes an identity crisis. And I can tell you that I've experienced racism from both sides, from my own people and from outside the community. My first experience was my junior high English teacher, who, this tells you how small my town was. She was also the mayor of the town. And being in that class, once my mother became very active in creating a community center for the Indigenous community that lived in town and not on the reservation that was 20 miles away, I went from being an A student to a C student with behavioral issues. And that was my first experience with society and the social world and the assumptions people make. And it made me very socially aware at a young age. So, growing up, going into college, going into my career, it really shaped how I approach what I do, what I studied, and how I wanted to make sure those assumptions, how do we educate people to help them not make those assumptions? How do we reduce not just stigma for mental health, but reduce assumptions made about a community and stereotypes? And another aspect that really affected my own mental health, I talk about, having an identity crisis, because when I moved to new places, people didn't know me. They didn't understand that I did grow up in the culture, and a lot of times I was rejected. And in Michigan, there is a treaty that gives indigenous populations who are recognized by the federal government free tuition, free public schooling, so that includes public universities. But in order to receive it, you had to be a member of a federally recognized tribe. The indigenous population is the only population in the United States that is required to carry a pedigree card. If you do not have that card, you do not receive services. So that card, unfortunately, was taken away from me for a period of time while I was in school, because since the Native American culture did not have a written language, we did not have the proper written documentation. And there were political issues, and because my family didn't have the documentation, they took my card away. They took my identity away. So these experiences, in addition to generational trauma, which I didn't realize affected me, my grandmother and 11 of her 12 brothers and sisters were stolen from her family by the U.S. government and thrown in a Catholic boarding school. They weren't allowed to speak their language. They were not allowed to practice their own traditions, and they were forced into believing in a higher power that was not something that their family had been introduced to. And with how that affected my family, even though I wasn't the one in that boarding school, I can give you numerous examples of how that affects the dynamics of the family. And I just recently was diagnosed with CPTSD and am working through that generational trauma. So those experiences have really allowed me to have a unique perspective on the importance of knowing who you serve and the specialized needs of each population that you are serving. So this has helped me develop a very intentional effort to incorporate multicultural and international perspectives in everything I do, and especially right now, the services we offer at NAMI North Texas, and how do we continue to be more and more inclusive to make sure populations who have such a high stigma in their communities learn that, yes, there is a place that you can reach out and you don't have to worry about other people finding out that you're seeking assistance.
Thank you so much for sharing those personal experiences and how they've shaped your work today, Athena. So next up, we're going to turn to Philip. Philip, you have such an interesting perspective, both because of your work in Rotaract and your status as a public image coordinator in Rotary. So maybe you could start by discussing a partnership that Rotaractors in Denmark have with an organization called Headspace, and talk to us about the unique approach that Rotaract took to supporting members during the pandemic.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Lauren. And I'm very grateful to be here. I'm very touched by the stories that we've already heard from my great fellow panelists here. But as a Rotary public image coordinator working with public image, I, of course, see projects and partnerships as an opportunity to gain more awareness about the organization itself, so we can do better for the rest of the world. So Rotary districts and clubs across all of Denmark has partnered up with this organization called Headspace Denmark. And while a lot of kids and young people in Denmark are thriving, unfortunately, we see a growing group of about 20 to 25% of kids and young people in Denmark that are not feeling well in their daily life. So Headspace focus on helping this particular group from 12 to 25. And what they focus on is to prevent children and young minds to suffer from deeper mental illnesses by being available for a free talk at a local center. They call them headspace centers. And it's a talk with people that are not necessarily professionals, or actually they are not professionals. They are volunteers. They're no psychiatrists or doctors or anything like that. They are trained in talking to young people, and they are vetted, of course, but they're not trained to be treating people. Headspace is simply a place for kids and young people to have somebody to talk to and to be listened to, all done anonymously. And if the volunteers actually see that there is a need for help, for professional help, Headspace partners up with local authorities to make sure that these people get the help that they actually need. And what they found out, which is quite interesting, and I love the metaphor that they use, is that they kind of work as a revolving door. They try to catch the young people and the kids before it gets so worse that they need medical treatment. And they do that simply by talking and by listening, and not necessarily focusing on what they are in trouble with, what they're struggling with, but just being there, talking and listening. And as of now, Headspace have 32 centers across the entire country, and that kind of accounts for almost 1/3 of the municipalities in Denmark. And what's interesting is that this organization was actually founded by the former Prime Minister of Denmark, Poul Nyrup Rasmussen, and he's still a vital part of the organization. He was inspired by another similar organization by the same name in Australia. So what Rotary does in this project is that we, aside from, of course, donations to local centers and the organization itself, Rotary helps kick in doors to the mayors and to the boards in the communities to help start and to help found these centers, and of course also fund them to make sure that they can run. And I think that it's a clear example of how Rotary partners up with other organizations and use connections to help. It shows that we're not just people of action, but we're also people of influence. Now, you were asking me about what Rotaractor did during the pandemic, and I'm really glad that you asked me about that, because it's something that's very close to my heart and actually changed my life a lot. We just established that not feeling well in daily life, it's a growing issue among kids and young people. So if we go back to 2020, a little over 4 years ago now, it's crazy that it's so long ago, but it is. And when we look at societies all over the world that shut down and everybody had to stay home by themselves, isolated from the rest of the world, what Rotaractor did in Europe was this little group of Rotaractors, just a few, they created what they called World of Rotaractor. And what it was a 24-hour open Zoom call. So everyone could join. It was naturally mostly Rotaractors, but everybody could join, and it was a safe space, a space to talk, to chill, and just be in each other's company digitally, of course, from your own apartment or wherever you was. And this initiative spawned not just in Europe, it spawned across the globe. And we had Rotaractors from anywhere from North and South America, Europe, Africa, Middle East, Asia, Pacifics, everywhere joined in. It was actually a great time. It feels interesting to say that, but it was a great time. And I was a big part of this core group. And we ended up spending not just hours, we had spent days together. And I want to maybe say together, because we were all online from different parts of the world. And we ended up spending a lot of time together, sometimes up to 14, 15, 16 hours a day. So not that days, also nights. But what it was a platform for us to talk about the changing world and how we dealt with it, and the situation. Also, of course, talking about everything else, and it was a very giving thing. But Rotary means Rotaract means Rotary in action. So we also arranged talks with interesting people like Jennifer Jones and very interesting topics as well. We did movie nights, game nights, stand-up comedy nights with stand-up comedians from New York and Sweden and everywhere. We even hosted virtual conferences for up to 600 people. And I personally played 10 parties as a DJ for up to 200 people in their little tiny squares, dancing and having fun. And I believe that it created strong friendships across the globe. But also, I think that it did prevent some mental health issues along the road as well.
Thank you for sharing about the power of those connections, Philip, even in the hardest times. So we have time for one more question, and I'd like to address it in turn to all of you. What are your plans to continue working, advocating, or addressing stigma in the mental health field in Rotary beyond this year? Philip, would you like to go first?
Sure. Thanks, Lauren. So I've personally been fighting depression over the past 13 years. And I think that it partly been because it's hard to say yes for me, or I always say yes. So it's hard for me to say no when I'm asked about things and helping out. And you often see that in a lot of volunteer organizations, that tendency that it's hard to say no because you want to do stuff. So I think within Rotary, it's and Mark, when I say Rotary, I mean Rotary, Rotaract, and Interact as well. I think that it's important to highlight that it's important that we, each one of us, take care of ourselves and our own well-being. And to me, it starts by telling your own story, me telling my personal story, and trying to break the taboo, trying to inspire other people to speak up about how they feel and not feel ashamed about it. I think it's very important that we engage in these tough conversations in order to address this stigma. And to me, it all comes down to, like, if we need to take care of ourselves before we can take care of others. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Philip. Athena, how about your plans for your continued work?
First of all, I would love to echo Philip's sentiments and thank him for sharing his experience and everything that he is doing for the communities that he serves. For us, the big thing for us is to continue raising the profile of NAMI, not just here in North Texas, but all across the nation, helping our fellow affiliates, helping our state organizations and national to combat stigma and normalize the conversation to the point where we can say, I need to go to my therapist appointment. I'll be right back, just like we say, I need to go to my dentist appointment, and not face fear of losing your job, just something, being upset and feeling like you're weak because you're having a hard time getting through the day. So we want to do that. We want to advocate at the local, state, and national levels to make sure that our legislators know and understand and appropriate money for services, especially here in Texas. We are 51 out of 51 for access to mental health services. We have the highest rate of uninsured citizens in this state, and so we will be working very hard to make sure that we increase access for everybody. And expanding our partnerships, not just with Rotary, but with other community organizations. NAMI is one of the foremost grassroots organizations. We rely very heavily on our partnerships and on our volunteers to be able to help us educate and advocate and support each other and build that community. So developing those lasting partnerships are key to us being able to combat stigma and increase access to mental health services.
Thank you, Athena, for sharing that. And finally, Glenda, please share your continued plans for prioritizing mental health.
Thank you, Lauren. I have so many plans, but I believe, and this is the same thing as Philip had said, you know, for me to be able to continue the work that I do, it's all about self-care, right? So taking care of myself, that's at the top of my list of things to do, taking care of my own mental health so I can actually do what I want to do. But in terms of plans outside of me, there's actually a lot of things that's unfolding right now as the RCC Ilaw ng Tahanan is, a lot more people are hearing about it. A lot more people are hearing about the work that I've done with them. And so there are invitations for like another region here in the Philippines where we're being invited to do work with them. And so what the plan is really taking the mothers of the RCC Ilaw ng Tahanan and bring them to the region, to the other part of the Philippines to actually start an RCC, their version of RCC with the mothers leading that training. And so I'm just going to be continuously supporting the mothers of the RCC. Also, within our district, mental health is becoming a priority. So this coming year, we're continuing the work of raising awareness and supporting the incoming officers for all the clubs here in the district. We're going to be doing some mental health training. Also, we're going to be doing training for responding to crisis, suicide intervention, so all sorts of different things. But it's all opening up because of this work that we've done the past couple of years. So lots of plans, and I'm just really excited to keep growing, keep pushing forward, and hopefully connect with more people so that there's more collaboration that happens. So I'm really excited about what's coming up. So thank you.
Thank you, Glenda. And thank you all so much for sharing your time, expertise, and experience with all of us. And thank you again to President Gordon for championing this vital initiative. Finally, thank you to all of you watching for joining us and engaging in this dialogue. Remember, you can ask questions here online or by emailing mindhealth@rotary.org. You can also find more information about the mental health initiative on rotary.org. Finally, we'd like to take this opportunity to remind everyone that the mental health focus can and will continue into the future Rotary years. Rotary encourages members and clubs to continue and expand mental health projects and suggests you join or partner with the Rotary Action Group on Mental Health Initiatives to continue this vital work. Thank you all again for joining us today.